Hi everybody, my name is Jason. I live here in Flagstaff, Arizona, and I'm here today to talk to you guys about a wiring harness replacement I just did. The reason why I'm doing this video is to make it a little bit easier for anybody that's getting ready to tackle the job and reassure them that it is something you can do with the help of not only the internet, but your wiring diagram and the Alfa bulletin board, which has been very helpful in answering a lot of questions I had. Alfa BB is incredible. And this is a 1972 Alfa Romeo GTV 2-liter that has a conversion to Weber GCOEs from the original speak injection. It's running a Pertronics and a MSD. This is the anti-vibration coil here because you can put this one on its side and it won't leak the oil out. I learned that the hard way with a flamethrower earlier, where I basically fried up the coil because I had it on its side. Let's talk about the wiring harness itself. I purchased it from Classic Alfa out of the UK. It's a pretty good harness. They make it for the GTV there in the UK market. So a lot of the European GTVs didn't have a whole lot of relays on them, and it's very bare bones. The only problem I had was there was a few wires missing, obviously, because it is a USA spec. I had to add a few wires for relays, and I was a little disappointed with a few other things. One is that they neglected to put a few basic wires in, mostly a fuel pump wire and some wires for the fog lights, which I just assume that they probably don't even use fog lights or something over there. I'm not really sure. Whenever I did contact them and ask them for a wiring diagram for the 70s GTV, they didn't have one. They sent me one for a 750, which was kind of close enough for what I needed, but it wasn't right on. It did help a little bit, and you can find it online. So anyway, so I'm here with a wiring harness for a GTV that was probably around $500, I believe. In hindsight, I should have just bit the bullet, paid the money, and contact Lionel Velez off of Alfa BB. He's this incredible guy that builds wiring harnesses, and I talked to him a few times. He's very, very knowledgeable. And from all the other stuff I read online, the guy is amazing as far as the harnesses he builds. This is a cell phone YouTube video, so I'm not a big YouTube poster, but here it's just to try and give you guys a little bit more insight into how we do wiring harnesses, and just to see if I can help answer a couple questions and make it a little bit easier for people. So with that, we already talked about the wires we had to add, so let's start on the inside of the car here. I did post another video where I actually did finish it and got the car started, which was incredible. Everything seems to be holding charge correctly, and the multimeter is showing that nothing is overloaded and everything seems to be doing really well. All lights are doing good also. It's pretty satisfying whenever you fire up your car and you don't start popping fuses left and right. So here it is. Here I actually kept the original fuse box because it seems to work pretty well. I did actually look at trying to get some other fuse boxes that would work with this car, but I couldn't find anything that would have the same crossover connections between the 1 through 4 and then the other ones that are all married on the top on the top pins up here. I have seen some people on Alfa BB try to actually do some plastic molding or actual plastic printing of a fuse box, and I'm sure as that technology gets better, more and more people will go that route. So I actually just restored the old one, and I think it's going to turn out just fine and work, just as well. I'm pretty happy with it so far, and it really hasn't given me a whole lot of problems unless I have something shorting out. So I live in a pretty dry climate, so I'm not really too worried about corrosion, but I did actually clean everything up. So here's the actual fuse box itself. Everything is all nicely labeled up high, so that if something does come unplugged, I know exactly where it needs to go. I went through and took my time on this, and that was the biggest thing. I have another one here. This guy actually right here goes to the fuel pump and to the fog light relay. This is that lower one here, and that jumps off the main fuse box. Here is my fuel pump right here, wire I had to add. So this is the wiring harness inside the car once everything is all kind of hooked up and operating properly. I just haven't tucked everything back up, and the reason why I'm doing this video now is I want to show you guys what it looks like with everything out from underneath. So let's go through objects real quick. So we have the fuse box. You have this black box down here, which this is your flasher This is your flasher switch for your turn signal and for your emergency flasher. As I said, there's your other jumper fuses 11 and 12. Main plug, wiper plug, a few other ones in here. All these ones were correct, you know, they all did actually work pretty well, and everything seems to be operating properly. Here's your AB plug right there for the gauges up there on the dash, including your little grounder cable here that also connects to the actual gauge cluster. Up here is your high beam, low beam switch and turn signals. I didn't ever have high beams or low beam switch actually. I had high beam and low beam, but I didn't have a turn signal switch operating properly. And I talked to this brilliant guy down in Phoenix named, I can't remember, but like the place was called Auto International, and he was like this brilliant Alfa Romeo guy. He's down there in the Phoenix Valley, and he said instead of trying to find a new one or pay a ton of money, just try and clean up the one you have, and that's what I did, and it's working great now. So again, you know, clean up all your contacts before you tackle this, because you don't want to be taking apart all your interior dash stuff again, have to get back down into it. Okay, so let's talk about the products I got. So here is the junk show of wires. You need to get a bunch of wire. You need to get a bunch of connectors, and you have to get preferably connectors that are heat shrink, so you can, you know, put some heat to these with a heat gun like this one right here. That's just a cheapo Porter cable, but it worked great. And the idea is that you can connect everything and make it look tidy. And then on top of that is you want to order a bunch of this stuff also. So this is like the heat shrink sort of like coverage you put over all your connectors, and this just helps to waterproof everything. But I think it also reinforces your connectors too when you hook them up and crimp them to the wire. Gives a little bit of extra rigidity to them. But you know, it also just makes it look pretty tidy. I tried to stay away from electrical tape on this project as much as I could. This stuff is gummy and it just makes a mess, and over time it just gets hot and peels off and just looks unpro. Dremel with a small little wire wheel. This is for cleaning up all your little contacts. All your QD cleaner. You definitely need about 3 cans of this. And all this wire right here is amazing. I got all this stuff in all different gauges you might need from the Wire Barn. And the reason why I chose the Wire Barn was it's this guy that he cuts it right to the length you need. He'll give you all the different gauges, and the price is right. The price is amazing, and it came probably like 2 days later, so super fast delivery. And then the other thing I got here is this is the light change up. So I've always worried about somebody rearing in the back of me in the middle of the night here because the lights were so dim on this car. So I kind of got over it. And as far as the rear tail lights, I went to Super Bright LEDs, which is like this online company, and these are incredibly expensive, and it's the best upgrade you can do for your car. I went and got this basically style right here, which is 1157. Single, I don't know what you would call that, single pole, I guess, right there for your rear light there. This one right here is for your brake lights. That's 1157, that's 1156. And this right here is your interior lights, if you still have those operational. So these are 2 different types right here. I got this one here for the glove box because it's not as bright, and I don't want to light up the cab like it's, you know, like a spaceship. I got these 2 actually though for the trunk and for the inside of the hood, because when you break down in the middle of the night, you want to be able to see what you're doing out there. Those actually replace this guy. The only thing I did actually kind of mess up was I ordered these guys, and you can see these are slightly 2 different sizes here, but upon just like pressing the pins in a little bit, they hold just fine within the actual cartridge, so you know, within the actual light that's mounted to the car. I did buy a few more of these because anybody that has an Alfa knows that these guys get banged up pretty easy, and they're kind of hard to find, hard to replace. So you know, you can find these online pretty easy. Actually, they're not, you know, they're not that hard, but it's still good to clean them all up. And you know, it's just your good switches. You want to make sure those are working, so you don't have these always be in contact and burn your battery out. And I'll talk about relays in a second. Okay, so back to this guy here. So what I did, as I said, is I went through, and first thing I did was take and lay out my wiring harness on the driveway, and I put the new one right alongside of it. And anything I had a question about, I went and put the the multimeter to check for continuity. So any wire I wasn't sure of, I would just sit there and hook it up to one side and just start tapping every the wires are the same color until I found the right one. After I was done, I am lucky that the wiring harness did not is actually in pretty good shape. But I hung that then from my garage ceiling here, and any other questions I had, I would just go refer back to that, like like it's a real life diagram. Having said that, here was my friend for about 2 weeks while I put all this back together. This is the color-coded wiring diagram. You got to get one of these. This thing is incredible. This is technically for a WT110, but it works just as well for this, for the 72. It works very good. But as I said, it wasn't the same one as the UK. So there was a few things I had to add, including, you can see it right there in the middle there, the starter relay had to be added, and the actual fuel pump wire and a few other wires, including some extra addition wires for the low brake fluid switches. If you see that one above the actual reservoir picture, it says brake pressure failure switch. I don't know if they didn't have those in the UK or something, but I had to jump another wire and wrap it all in. One more thing I had to purchase, actually, I want to mention, is this stuff right here. This is the non-adhesive tape that they use for wrapping wiring harness. And you can look on YouTube and see exactly how you're supposed to wrap this, but this stuff is way better than the actual electrical tape right there. This stuff will actually not cause any gumminess, and it won't come unraveled if you actually wrap it correctly. All right, so the original reason why I had to actually fix this car was because on my wiring harness, I took it for one last drive in December, and as I was pulling out the end of my driveway, this right here happened. I fried a bunch of these wires, and what it was pulling too much charge without a starter relay to the actual starter itself. And eventually it just gave up, couldn't handle it. Luckily the switch isn't destroyed, because as I said, the car restarted, but I had to do the push of shame and have my neighbors help me get it back to the garage, which was very nice of them. It only cost me about a 12-pack. And I decided at that point, it's a 72, the wiring harness is very old, time to just replace it and go for it. So there we go. The first part of the wiring harness that I actually repaired was the smallest and easiest, which was this section right in here. And I'll run around this other side here actually so I can show you these switches. Label everything, including when you're taking stuff apart too. Get yourself a bunch of cheap bags here at some dollar store, and just when you're taking out all your bolts and everything, just label everything so you know what you're doing. So here's all the different switches and all the different lights. The only light bulb I didn't replace were those little tiny center console lights. I don't know if they make those in LED, but they didn't have them, and I didn't think I need them anyway. They don't seem to ever burn out. Again, the fog light switch is something I had to wire up also. I had to add that to the harness because those aren't in the classic Alfa setup. It worked out just fine. That red wire right there, actually, I think it's supposed to be yellow, but I ran out of like a fat yellow, so I just did the red there for now, which is fine. Everything is so well labeled, it's kind of hard to mess it up. I also am adding, so you can get some light here. So I'm adding this guy right here, and this is going to go into the glove box, and this is just a little USB charger. So it's still going to maintain its period correctness, but it's going to be hidden inside the glove box, so I actually have a place to charge your phone or anything while you're heading down the road. I did put a proper radio into this thing too, and that sits inside the dashboard, but those wires haven't changed. The wipers all worked really good. As I said, I cleaned all the contacts, all the switches. And here's the one for the fan. This is a common question on people on the Alfa BB about the fan for the heater. So let me flip around the light here and show you. This is what it looks like when the fan is exposed. You can kind of see this is the actual main cord of the harness going to the center console. Off that part of the harness, you have these two wires down here on the bottom, and then on the right side of that, you have your ground. So I reset the ground up high, hit that with a wire wheel and cleaned it all up. I just put all my grounds back on and put some paint over it to keep it from corroding. The two wires over here, I'm not really sure exactly how they work, because I know if I switch these, it just stays on in high speed. But if I switch it the other way, if I have it on correctly like it is now, there is a low speed and a high speed. How the switch actually works, and I'm not sure if it's like this for all models, but When it's in the middle phase, so right there is off. If it's in middle, then it'll be on high speed. So it goes right to high from off, which is interesting. But if you go all the way up, that's actually low. So that's low, middle, high. So that's your fan, and you can kind of see how these wires all hook up off that guy. You can also find all these numbers and stuff too on Alpha BB about how, you know, like which wire goes where and the whole deal. You know, luckily a lot of these switches are in pretty good shape unless they're way over corroded and they don't work very well. A lot of these white wires that are that have the black stripe, they actually go directly over through the harness into the dimmer right here, and we'll talk about that in just a second. So the fan itself, obviously that's the heater core inside there too, and you can see this black cable coming off of here. That's your way to actually adjust and go from defrost or down to floor. You can kind of see how your little plastic piece comes off here too. You kind of have to put some pressure on it on the side there, and then the actual plastic piece pops off before you are able to slide it out from underneath the wooden dash console. Some people say that it's a good idea to drill some holes down in here to be able to have water drain out, because if you see the fan motor sits on the bottom, and I hear a lot of people saying that thing will corrode up and not function properly. All right, glove box light here, and I am going to hook up a switch, but I'm going to do a manual flip switch to it because the switch that resembles the ones that go in the door, like the one right there, those switches, you need like a special bracket for that goes on the inside of your glove box. And actually, I don't even have a glove box for this thing, so I'm going to build one, and I'm just going to have a manual switch inside the glove box that's going to take care of that switch. If you come to Flagstaff, please don't steal my car, because I'm going to show you guys this secret too. I am always worried about this car getting ripped off, and obviously I lock it everywhere I go. But what I did here is I actually jumped this wire, and this is the coil wire. So this is the green with black stripe wire that comes off of the fuse box that usually goes to the ignition coil. This would either supply power to your baluster if you have it. If you don't have it, it would go right to the coil itself. When somebody goes to steal your car, if they turn the key, they're going to think that there is a kill switch somewhere. But this right here allows you to continue to turn the key, and the car just turns over, and they think the car doesn't start, and they just get disheartened, and then they just take off, and they don't even try to steal the car without realizing that you actually have a kill switch going. So this is going to be another hidden kill switch under the dash that's going to be able to have the car turn over, and the starter will engage, but it will never fire up. And it's just a little secret way to keep your car from getting swiped. I've done this with old cars for years and years, and it's worked pretty well. One time I came back with it to a broken window, but the car was still there. So okay. All right, so that's the fan, as we talked about, your wiper, your fog light switch, which we'll talk about that in a second, to the relay. Okay, this is a very long-winded video, I know, but if you're getting ready to do this job, it's worth the time to watch and see what I had to go through for the last 2 weeks. So you don't have to take as much time. Here's all your hazard switch, and there's all your different plugs going in the back of there. Those were all wired up correctly. Here is your dimmer, and you can kind of see that just works on a resistor on the back there that slides across that tumbler, and that's what helps to help basically reduce the voltage. I did have a few extra wires, and there's a great example. Extra black wire. It seems to go to the gauge, but it doesn't hook up to anything on the wiring diagram. And a few other little guys up in here too. Wires that didn't really seem to go anything, so I just plugged them off and zip tied them. Like this right here is the big black cable that goes off your column, and this goes to the key buzzer switches, which attach into the door there. I'm not really in need of that, so instead of plugging that back in, just got some more of that heat shrink and just shrunk it on there and clipped it off. This will just get zip tied up underneath the dash, and I'll never see it again. And frankly, if you're like me, I can't stand key buzzers when you get inside of a car. These are all additions I think they had to do in the 70s for some sort of safety thing, but it's just not my thing. The harness itself fit really well. Everything seemed to go in okay, and all the lengths were proper. Everything did plug up pretty well, but you have to pay attention to everything really well. Great example is this guy right here. They were backwards on their two wires here for the turn signals. So you simply take a screwdriver, slide it in there to release that sort of little tooth that's on the actual clip for the wire. So the wire end connector has like a little tooth that pops up that connects into the plastic. When you slide a small little metal screwdriver or something in there, it'll help press that down. And then you can slide that out real easy. And then I swapped them and then popped it in, and it works great. Everything works awesome. Okay, I did a few things here to the steering wheel, nothing too crazy. Just kind of clean stuff up a little bit. A lot of the wires luckily are still in pretty good shape, but that's the interior cab. I don't have any interior lights in this either, and that's something I'll probably add on later on. And you know, the wires are there ready to go. They're just nicely sealed up and on standby. So that's something I might do later on if I want, but again, not really thinking it's necessary. The other wire here is going to the e-brake, and this is a common question too that comes across Alfa BAB is if you have the brake light on in your gauge cluster, the e-brake light on, even when you're driving down the road and this guy is down and your brake light's still on, everybody's kind of freaking out, wondering exactly what's going on. I thought it was the switch inside here, and it's not. I did actually obviously clean out that switch and put it back in. This is glued back on. This guy was cheap. This was like 20 bucks from Centerline. Those guys have a lot of great parts there. But I thought it was the actual switch in here, but it wasn't. And this will segue us into the motor. So that orange wire that talks about your brake failure, that actually comes out through the main harness here to this guy, and then I had to jumper a wire because all they had was just these two black wires and then one orange wire to a regular connector. I actually cut that, put another one on, had to put two new bullet connectors on to be able to have the orange wire connect to the brake fluid reservoir here, and then I had to spin one in with that harness tape I was talking about down here to this guy here, and this is your actual warning light here. Also, this is a switch, and this was my culprit. I thought it was actually the e-brake there through the window, but it wasn't. It was actually this guy here that was giving me the light on. So I haven't had a chance to fix that yet, and that's a mechanical issue I'll take care of here. I'll take that out, and I'll clean that switch out real good, reassemble, see if that works. If it doesn't, I'll pull the whole reservoir here, clean it all out, check all the plungers, and then I'll put it back in. Go from there. Okay, starting from the coil, you can see here is my green stripe wire that actually goes up into the coil itself. This is the one I have jumpered into the switch. It's going to be under the dash. That'll be the kill switch. All your other wires are nice and tucked up down in here that go down to starter, and a few other wires that have been hooked up to the Pertronix ignition. A few other things here, nothing too crazy there. Coming around here, you can see everything isn't super tucked down in yet, so that's why it's kind of untidy. But off of this guy right here is a wire that shoots down, and that goes to your reverse light switch that hooks onto your transmission. It's actually down under the car, and there's two wires that connect to that. I think they're white and yellow, but those two are actually what trigger your reverse light switch on that. Again, as I said, here's this guy right here to the brake reservoir. Then a bunch of wires dive up under here, and on the Alfa GTV 2000, on the 72, I'm not sure about the other models, but here is all of your relays. So you have your horn relay right here. This one is pretty easy to hook up. This is your black wire that goes up through the column, and it basically makes a ground every time you press the horn button. This is your power to the horn relay, and then this one actually, this purple wire actually goes out to the horns themselves, and that's actually what triggers the horn. Obviously it's taking out a bunch of power, that's why they put a relay on it. Alright, then you have your fog light relay, which, you know, for cranking out so much power, it's so tiny. You can see these two blue wires right here I had to add. Those go down to the fog lights. I got 12 gauge wire for all those because they're carrying a bunch of juice. The red actually comes off of the fuse box. Or correction, the red actually comes off of the switch that goes out to the actual fog lamp switch that you saw there inside the cab. And then you have the green and violet here also. These are all standard Bosch relays. They're really easy to get if you got to get them, but it's nice to keep the metal ones. I think they look better. They look more period correct. Last one here, this is your alternator. I think this is a regulator that goes down to the alternator. That was all really easy to click up, all good to go. And you see down there the motor, deep down inside there, oil pressure switch way down yonder. And I'm trying to point with my goofy finger. Here's your switch right here that goes up to the hood light, and you can see that guy up there. If you look close, you can see the LED light up inside there. There it is. It's nice and bright. Now let's talk about headlights. Headlights are a question for a lot of people. Some people say you should stick with halogen. A lot of people are going to LED. It wasn't LED for a long time because LED wasn't bright enough, and they just weren't given enough sight at really dark at night. So a lot of people were sticking with halogen, mostly the H4. Hella makes a good brand, but I heard the build quality isn't that great. I actually got the Hella. It was like this Vision Plus, and it was the flattest looking headlight. It was not good looking at all. It just had this flat face to it. It didn't look right inside these cars. They need to have a little bit of a curvature to the headlight. So this guy is a CB, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correct. This is a CB H4, and you can get these from Daniel Stearns Lighting. He's another incredibly knowledgeable guy, especially about classic car lighting, but Daniel Stearns. You can get these for about 150, 200 bucks for a pair. And then you can get LED bulbs for inside those. The LED bulbs I actually got from Summit Racing. The fog lamps right here are normal sealed beams. These are ones by GE that Centerline has on sale right now in June of whatever this is, 2019, for 10 bucks each. So I'm not sure how long these lights are going to be around, but you should get a couple of these and just put them in storage if you're not gonna use them right away. All the actual connectors went pretty well with this. There's really nothing special about it. The clearance for the back of the LED bulb works really well on this CB, and I'll show you that guy here. Here's the bulb I purchased. A lot of people were questioning because the CB came inside of a box that said Vallejo, but I think it had something to do with like a buyout, and the headlight still seems like it's just as good quality. I'm sure it's not as good as the 1970s ones, but if you can source those somewhere, better luck to you. Here's the actual LED bulbs I purchased. They're 3,000 lumens, good enough for what I need, and then I think that doubles when it goes into high beam. But what's great about this is the LED bulb is I didn't have to put a relay in for the main headlights. You can go straight off the actual wiring for the headlights that you had on before, because LED bulbs take much less voltage than the old halogens or like the other ones, and they're getting to be just as good. I actually can see most people converting their headlights to LED now. Also, they last forever too. They don't burn out, and yeah. Here's my old Wagner's sealed bulb, as you can tell. That CB is also that H4 connector in the back, and you can use that. There is one other thing I want to show you real quick on the fuse box here, and that's this guy here. So I found this on Amazon actually, and this is a possible way to convert your fuse box if you want to. So this was from a company on Amazon. You just got to search for it, and it's a plug style fuses. I can't remember what they're called, but if you want to get away from the bullet, like the bullet style fuses, and actually go toward these fuses right here, these guys right here, you can actually get this guy. But the only problem with this, again, is that unless you're going to make a bunch of jumper wires to be able to hook up 1 through 4, and then 5 and 6, and then 7 and 8, and all those other ones, this is only one pin per fuse. So, but this is a nice option if you want to get it. If you want to get away from the bullet style fuse box, or if your fuse box is melted, which I've seen a lot of those melted, you can always just get this guy here. It was like 13 bucks, super cheap. But if you're up for the task, go for it. Okay, so that's the motor, so the engine compartment itself. Let's go back to the trunk. So here is the trunk here. Might be a little dark in here. We'll try and do the best we can. There's a fuel sender unit. There's the wire right there that I had to add into the back that goes through that hole to the mechanical fuel pump, because I converted it obviously from the high pressure Spica to a low pressure Spica facet fuel pump. And then here's all your normal hookups to your rear lights, and everything were fine. Nothing was different. Everything was totally normal on how to do that. This one actually doesn't have a a license plate light, which is fascinating, but it does come with a license plate light wire, which is good. If you do use your rear defroster, defogger, whatever you want to call it, basically the metal lines that go across your back window to defrost it, it does actually come with that also. But I left that unhooked. I actually didn't need it. So, and then I obviously cleaned up my interior light here, and that's all set up. And there's your switch there. Switch is actually directly. I don't know if you can see this right. Yeah, there we go. The switch is directly underneath your arm here for your back trunk lid. Okay. Right. One last thing. Let's talk about the starter relay. So the reason why the actual car melted the first time was because my green wire that came off my ignition basically melted all the way down to the sheath, and I decided to put a relay in. So I got a normal relay. These are just a normal. You can get a 4-pin. 5-pin doesn't matter. You don't have to go to 2 separate circuits. So a 4-pin will work just as well. But you have your different numbers on here that will go different places, right? This is all on that wiring diagram, and if you follow those numbers correctly, it'll tell you exactly where you have to go for which pin number. It's definitely the way to go. A lot of people are kind of freaked out by relays because they're not sure what they do, but if you actually look at, like, a relay is essentially just a lower voltage wire that's just turning a switch on to the higher voltage power giver, if you want to call it that. So it's supplying power from another source that can handle the power load, and because it's just basically running a switch, it's going to take barely any amperage at all to be able to make it work. I'm not even an electrical guy, as you can tell by my lingo, but putting the relay in is definitely the way to go. I don't know if it's just in my brain, but the car seems to be starting like a lot more, a lot faster and with a lot more, I don't want to say necessity, but just the car seems to be starting way better. I actually took this relay, and you can see all my grounds up in there. Get some light on it. So yeah, so there's all my grounds up there, and then there's the relay. And the relay, I just put a self-tapper into the side there, just above the steering column, and it's nice up out of the way. And you can see there's a red wire in there that has a black stripe. That's actually the one that originally went to the starter relay on the diagram, but because it's a short run, I ran it actually underneath the column here. If you actually look on the diagram, it shows the relay is actually in the engine compartment, or it appears that way, and that black wire on the left there seems to show that going directly to the starter. Now the issue is that this black wire, because it's a UK wiring diagram, came all the way up here to the ignition. So instead of putting the relay inside the actual motor compartment, I basically just kept the relay inside the engine, or the actual passenger compartment here, and it makes it much cleaner, I think, and it's less susceptible to weather issues. Okay, so that's it right there. Now that's all that's left to do is to tidy a few more things up and get the center console back in, get all of the switches and lights and stuff plugged back in, get the dash back in, put the interior back in also, and take it off the dollies, check everything one more time, take the old harness, I'm going to wrap it up and put it in a box for years down the road because I'm sure I'll need it, and clean it up and take it for a run. So again, this is just to give you guys a quick overview of the wiring harness. If you have any questions at all, feel free to ask them in the comment section, and I'll be sure to answer them as best I can. Like I said, I'm not like a big wiring guy, but after doing this and reading a lot of stuff on Alfa BB and talking to a lot of other Alfa guys, it's been a really good experience, and now I feel much better about knowing Alfa wiring, especially Alfa wiring, than I ever did, and the importance of, as I said, relays and knowing how to keep your whole harness from frying. So anyway, hope you guys will be ready to tackle this job, and yeah, good luck.